Have you ever walked out of the grocery store feeling like you just bought some basics, but your receipt looks like you treated yourself? Here's the puzzle. The headline inflation numbers have cooled compared to the worst of it, but groceries still feel expensive and people are still angry about it. Today we're counting down 15 real reasons why food prices feel like luxury prices, and what you can actually do about it, using real data. Number 15 is the simplest one, and it trips people up all the time. Inflation is down does not mean prices went down. An inflation rate is about the speed of change, not the level. If grocery prices jumped fast for a couple of years, and then they start rising slowly, your wallet still feels the higher level every week. That's why you can hear food inflation is moderating and still feel like the store is squeezing you. It's not just a vibe. Research using surveys has found that even after grocery inflation fell from its peak, a big share of people kept saying they noticed grocery prices rising because the price level stayed high and kept inching up. Now, number 14. The baseline shift since 2019 is real, and it's bigger than many people realize. If you step back from any single sale sign and look at the national price index for food you buy at stores, the index went from 242.887 in December 2019 to 317.589 in January 2026. That's about a 30.8% increase over that stretch. Meanwhile, the overall all-items consumer price index went from 258.630 in December 2019 to 326.588 in January 2026, roughly a 26.3% increase. So groceries on average rose faster than overall consumer prices, especially during the surge years. And eating out rose even more. The food away from home index went from 288.078 in December 2019 to 390.471 in January 2026. About a 35.5% increase. If you remember the old baseline, even subconsciously, today's prices can feel like sticker shock again and again, even when the month-to-month changes are smaller. Number 13 is about why groceries feel louder than other costs: frequency and memory. You don't buy a couch every week. You buy food all the time. And when something is frequent, your brain keeps a running "this used to cost" scorecard. The same research that tracked grocery inflation and grocery inflation perception found that after the big inflation peak, more than 60% of respondents still strongly agreed they were noticing grocery price increases, even as the measured inflation rate declined. Because people compare to an older mental price, not just last year. In other words, the math people use at the checkout line is different from the math used in monthly economic headlines. Number 12. We're not just buying food anymore, we're buying more service, more convenience, and more preparedness, and that changes the bill. In the US, food away from home spending has grown so much that it reached 58.9% of total food expenditures in 2024. And total food spending that year was $2.58 trillion. That matters because the closer your purchase is to ready to eat, the more labor, rent, and overhead you're paying for. Even inside a grocery store, a bigger share of baskets can tilt toward pre-cut produce, ready-to-heat meals, single-serve items, and I don't have time foods. And here's the part that can make people mad. You can feel like you're buying less food, but you might be buying more service per item. The economy has been doing more of the cooking, chopping, mixing, and packaging for us, and it charges for that. Number 11 is the one that flips the usual blame game. The farm is not where most of your grocery dollar goes. According to the U.S. Food Dollar accounting for calendar year 2023, the farm share was 15.9 cents of each food dollar, while the marketing share was 84.1 cents. Marketing here doesn't mean just ads. It means everything after the farm gate: processing, packaging, transportation, wholesaling, retailing, and all the support services around that. Even for food at home specifically, the farm share can be higher because you're skipping the restaurant step. One chart shows farm establishments received 24.3 cents for each dollar spent on food at home in 2023. But either way, the big idea is the same. Most of what you pay is the cost of turning raw commodities into safe, consistent, year-round food on a shelf, in a building, with workers, refrigeration, trucks, computers, and inventory risk. So when costs spike in those downstream steps, Your grocery bill spikes even if farm prices don't move much. Number 10. Labor and overhead are the heavyweight costs, and they show up everywhere in the chain. In the same food dollar accounting for 2023, 53.9 cents of every food dollar went to the salaries and benefits of domestic workers, and 38.5 cents was dispensed as property income, with the remainder split between things like taxes and imports. In plain English, you're not just paying for food, you're paying for people and places. People who unload the truck, stock the shelf, run the register, clean the store, work the warehouse, drive the rig, staff the processing plant, do food safety and quality checks, handle accounting and insurance, and all the other jobs that keep food from becoming food poisoning. Places are expensive too. Stores, distribution centers, equipment, refrigeration units, and everything that has to be financed, maintained, insured, and replaced. You can argue about whether some companies are pricing fairly or not, but you can't argue that the modern food system is labor-heavy and infrastructure-heavy, and those costs don't vanish when commodity prices cool. Number 9. Energy is a straight-up multiplier, and it hits food like a drumbeat because food is heavy, perishable, and time-sensitive. Energy shows up as fuel, refrigeration, fertilizer inputs, packaging inputs, and plant utilities. The food dollar breakdown for 2023 puts energy used throughout the food supply chain at 4.3 cents of the food dollar. That might sound small until you remember it's woven into everything, often more than once. Now look at diesel, the workhorse fuel for trucking. Monthly U.S. on-highway diesel prices averaged about $5.754 per gallon in June 2022. And one weekly reading in June 2022 hit $5.810 per gallon. By January 2026, the monthly average was about $3.523 per gallon. That's a big swing. And swings like that don't just change what it costs to move food today, they change the contracts, the surcharges, and the just-in-case pricing decisions companies make when they don't trust costs to stay stable. Energy volatility is one reason food feels like it can't settle down. Number 8. The supply chain is not one chain, it's a web, and weak links become expensive links. When one part jams, costs show up somewhere else, often as, "We have to do this the expensive way now." During the pandemic era, this became painfully obvious. Shortages, sudden shifts in demand, and bottlenecks. A federal competition agency report on grocery supply chain disruptions describes how consumers experienced shortages and major price hikes, and it argues that the disruption didn't hit all firms equally. The same agency said dominant firms were often better able to protect their product supply, while smaller retailers had more difficulty obtaining products, and it raised concerns that some in the grocery retail industry seemed to use rising costs as an opportunity to raise prices further, with profits remaining elevated. That doesn't prove every price increase was unfair, but it does show that when the world is chaotic, size, bargaining power, and purchasing leverage can change who gets product, who eats costs, and who gets to pass costs through. Number 7. Choke points and concentration can shape prices, especially in meat. Here's one set of numbers that matters because it describes the structure of the market, not just the emotion of the moment. In U.S. meatpacking, the 4 largest firms handled 85% of all steer and heifer purchases and 67% of all hog purchases, according to an analysis focused on concentration and competition. It also notes that in most parts of the country, ranchers and farmers now have 2 to 4 buyers for their cattle or hogs. When a market has fewer big buyers or fewer big processors, disruptions can hit harder, and bargaining power can shift quickly. And even without disruption, fewer major players can mean fewer alternative paths from farm to shelf. That structure can matter for both livestock prices paid to producers and meat prices faced by consumers, depending on what's happening to feed, herd size, plant capacity, and demand. Number 6. Biology runs on its own clock and food prices don't wait for your budget. This is especially true for animal products like beef, where supply adjusts slowly. If a herd shrinks, you can't fix it next quarter, and the data is pointing to tight supplies. One official food price forecast notes that beef and veal prices were 16.4% higher in December 2025 than in December 2024. And it highlights that the U.S. cattle herd has decreased in size since 2019, while demand has remained strong. In that same forecast, beef and veal prices were predicted to increase 9.4% in 2026, with wide uncertainty. So when people ask, why is this still expensive? Part of the answer is, animals take time, and the system can't instantly create more supply just because shoppers are frustrated. Number 5. Disease shocks are real, and they can be brutal on specific items, especially eggs. If you remember egg prices jumping in recent years, that wasn't your imagination. Official forecasting notes point to highly pathogenic avian influenza beginning in 2022 as a contributor to elevated egg prices by reducing egg layer flocks and egg production. Those same notes say confirmed cases tapered in 2025 and production increased, with retail egg prices down sharply by December 2025 compared to December 2024, and egg prices forecast to decrease again in 2026, again with uncertainty. The larger lesson is not just about eggs. It's that food isn't like a gadget factory. You can't simply schedule an extra shift when a disease wipes out part of the supply. You lose time, animals, and capacity, and you pay more until supply recovers. Number 4. Weather doesn't have to destroy the whole food system to spike your bill. It just has to disrupt the wrong crops at the wrong time. This is why produce can feel like it swings wildly, while other categories feel steadier. Official food price analysis explicitly says vegetable prices can undergo large swings based on weather, production, seasonality, and other factors, and it also says fruit prices can swing for similar reasons. On the bigger climate question, major scientific assessments say climate change is expected to increase variability in food production and prices globally, and they also estimate that food loss and waste is a large share of what's produced, meaning the system already has leakage, and variability makes those losses harder to manage. Even large economic institutions have modeled that weather patterns like El Niño can push global food commodity prices upward. One analysis suggests global food commodity prices could rise by up to 9% if El Niño conditions develop into a strong event, with peak effects occurring after a lag. You don't need to memorize the models. Just remember the practical point. More weather volatility tends to mean more price volatility, and grocery stores pass volatility into your cart. Number 3. Shrinkflation is real, but it's more complicated than they're tricking you and inflation stats ignore it. Shrinkflation is when the package gets smaller and the sticker price stays the same, so the unit price quietly rises. A government analysis explains that consumer price inflation measurement tries to capture product size changes in the Consumer Price Index, and the statistical agency has even created research series to estimate what inflation would look like without product size changes. Another government watchdog looked at shrinkflation patterns and noted that while reports of downsized items increased starting in early 2022, shrinkflation had a minimal impact on overall inflation from 2019 to 2024 because downsized items were a small percentage of what's tracked. And many major costs, like housing, can't be downsized in the same way. Translation: shrinkflation can absolutely hit your household budget and make groceries feel dishonest, but it's not the single master explanation for all food inflation. It's one tool in a broader pricing toolbox. And here's the part most people miss. Shrinkflation is often legal because packages are still required to tell you how much is inside. For packaged foods, regulations require a declaration of net quantity of contents on the principal display panel expressed in weight, measure, or count. So the system basically says, we'll allow different package sizes, but you have to disclose the size. The catch is that disclosure doesn't help much if you don't compare unit prices. And unit pricing is messy in the US because it's largely handled at the state level, not by one simple federal rule, and state rules vary. That's why two products can look almost the same on the shelf and still be totally different deals. When the grocery store feels like a luxury store, part of what you're paying for is confusion. The most powerful move you have is not a coupon, it's unit math. Number 2, the discount system has changed, and it can make you feel like you're being charged a non-member penalty. A lot of stores now treat discounts as something you unlock through apps, loyalty accounts, digital coupons, and personalized offers. That creates two prices in your mind: the price you should get and the price you get when you miss the digital step. When you miss it, you feel punished. And there's a second layer that's even touchier: personalized pricing and surveillance pricing. A federal competition agency study on this topic says initial staff findings show that retailers can use personal data to set targeted, tailored prices for goods and services, based on details that can include location, demographics, and even how you behave online. You don't have to assume every grocery store is doing this in the same way, or that it's always happening in the aisle. But the direction is clear. The pricing world is getting more personalized and more data-driven, and that can make shopping feel less like one fair price and more like, how good are you at playing the system today? Number 1 is the one that makes the grocery store feel most like a luxury store. Convenience has become a product, and it carries luxury-style pricing rules. Convenience isn't just pay a little extra. It can stack fees, markups, experiments, and subscriptions on top of already high food prices, and it often hides those costs until the very end. That's what people mean when they say, "My groceries got expensive overnight." Sometimes it's not the groceries, it's the method. Instacart is a clear example of how convenience pricing can turn into a different universe of prices. Reports in late 2025 said a study found some customers were shown grocery prices up to 23% higher than others for the same items at the same store, tied to item-level pricing experiments. In the same period, the company agreed to a $60 million settlement with the Federal Consumer Protection Agency over allegations related to deceptive free delivery promotions that didn't clearly disclose service fees that could add up to a meaningful percentage of orders. And the agency emphasized transparency. Even if you never use that service, the larger point still matters. When food shopping becomes app-based and delivered, you're no longer paying only for food. You're paying for speed, labor, logistics, and the business model, sometimes with less price predictability than an in-store shelf. That's luxury store territory. So let's recap the biggest takeaways. First, prices can feel stuck high because inflation slowing is not the same thing as prices falling, and food had a real baseline jump after 2019. Second, most of your food dollar is not the farm. It's the labor, infrastructure, packaging, transport, retail, and the services wrapped around food. Third, energy swings, supply chain shocks, and concentrated choke points can all push costs through the system, even when it looks like nothing changed on the shelf. Fourth, shrinkflation and deal gating don't explain everything, but they can absolutely make the experience feel unfair because they turn shopping into a puzzle you have to solve. And fifth, convenience can be the most expensive ingredient of all, especially when fees and pricing experiments enter the picture. If this helped you see your grocery bill differently, hit like. And I want a real answer in the comments. What item has shocked you the most in the last year? Meat, eggs, snacks, drinks, produce, or something else? And did you notice it was the sticker price, the package size, or the digital deal that got you? Share this with one person who keeps saying it's all just greed or it's all just inflation, because the truth is messier, and that's exactly why the grocery store feels like a luxury store right now.